Imagine a machine so small you can't see it. Now imagine that machine can build a copy of itself using raw materials from its environment. The first machine builds one copy in 1,000 seconds. Now there are two. Those two build two more, then 4, then 8, then 16. Within 10 hours, there are over 68 billion of them. In less than a day, they'd weigh a ton. In less than 2 days, they'd outweigh the Earth. And in another 4 hours, they'd exceed the mass of the Sun and all the planets combined. That is, if the raw materials didn't run out first. That thought experiment comes from a 1986 book called Engines of Creation, The Coming Era of Nanotechnology, written by K. Eric Drexler. It introduced the world to a term that would haunt the public imagination for decades: gray goo. But to understand where gray goo came from, you have to go back much further than 1986. The intellectual ancestor of the gray goo concept is the self-replicating machine. As early as 1802, the theologian William Paley formulated arguments about machines producing other machines. The real theoretical breakthrough came in the 1940s from the brilliant Hungarian-American mathematician John von Neumann. He proposed a thought experiment, a machine that could read a set of instructions, gather materials from its environment, and build a perfect copy of itself, including the instructions. He called these universal assemblers. By 1949, he was lecturing at the University of Illinois about self-reproducing automata, envisioning machines whose complexity could grow automatically, much like biological organisms evolving through natural selection. Von Neumann's ideas weren't just theoretical curiosities. They opened the door to a profound question about the cosmos. If a civilization could build a self-replicating probe, it could launch just one into space, and that probe could land on a distant planet, mine local resources, build copies of itself, and send those copies to other star systems. At speeds as modest as 10% the speed of light, such probes could colonize an entire galaxy the size of the Milky Way in as little as 500,000 years, which, on a cosmic timescale, is nothing. And that's where we bump into one of the most famous questions in science. In 1950, physicist Enrico Fermi sat down to lunch at Los Alamos National Laboratory with Edward Teller and a few colleagues. They were discussing UFOs and the feasibility of interstellar travel when Fermi blurted out something that still echoes today. Where is everybody? If self-replicating von Neumann probes are theoretically possible and the galaxy is billions of years old, the sky should be teeming with evidence of other civilizations. But it isn't. That's the Fermi paradox. And gray goo, it turns out, might be one of its darkest possible answers. Now let's return to the man who gave this nightmare its name. Kim Eric Drexler was born on April 25, 1955, in Oakland, California. He attended MIT, earning degrees in interdisciplinary science and engineering, before eventually receiving the first ever PhD in molecular nanotechnology in 1991. As a young student in the 1970s, Drexler was drawn to the limits to growth movement and became fascinated with extraterrestrial resources. He worked with Princeton physicist Gerard O'Neill on space colonization concepts and participated in NASA summer studies in 1975 and 1976. But Drexler's real obsession was molecular manufacturing, building on the foundation laid by Richard Feynman's legendary 1959 speech. There's plenty of room at the bottom. Drexler envisioned machines that could manipulate individual atoms and molecules. When he published Engines of Creation in 1986, with a foreword by AI pioneer Marvin Minsky, it ignited a worldwide nanotechnology craze. Corporations and universities began sponsoring research, governments formed committees, and the media ran wild with images of tiny robots that could keep your arteries unclogged, provided they didn't go into an unstoppable feeding frenzy and reduce the entire world to a quivering mass of goo. In the book, Drexler devoted just 2 paragraphs and a footnote to the gray goo concept. His description was chilling, but measured. He wrote about tough, omnivorous bacteria that could outcompete real bacteria, spreading like blowing pollen and reducing the biosphere to dust in a matter of days. But here's the crucial detail most people missed. Drexler presented this as a thought experiment about what deliberately designed machines could theoretically do, not what would happen by accident. Interestingly, the term gray goo may have actually appeared in print before Engines of Creation was published. Grant Fiermadal's book, The Tomorrow Makers, released 4 months earlier, quotes Drexler's then-wife, Christine Peterson, describing what she called the gray goo problem, a term already circulating among their research circle. Peterson, an MIT chemistry graduate, described bacteria-sized robots multiplying mindlessly, consuming everything carbon-based, then moving on to the rocks themselves. The real explosion of gray goo fear came in April 2000, when Bill Joy, co-founder and chief scientist of Sun Microsystems, published an article in Wired magazine titled "Why the Future Doesn't Need Us." Joy argued that robotics, genetic engineering, and nanotechnology all shared a dangerous amplifying factor. They can self-replicate. A bomb is blown up only once, he wrote, but one bot can become many and quickly get out of control. The article sent shockwaves through the tech world. In direct response, nanomedicine researcher Robert Freitas published the first quantitative technical analysis of what he called ecophagy, literally meaning eating the environment. Freitas calculated that a gray goo event proceeding slowly enough to add only 4 degrees Celsius to global warming, the threshold for immediate detection, would still require approximately 20 months to consume the biosphere. Not instant annihilation, but a slow, detectable catastrophe. The peak of gray goo anxiety ran from 2000 to 2004. Prince Charles publicly called on the Royal Society to investigate the enormous environmental risks of nanotechnology. Nobel laureate Richard Smalley engaged in heated public debates with Drexler, arguing that fat fingers, the fundamental physical constraints of molecular manipulation, made self-replicating nanobots impossible. Edinburgh physicist Wilson Poon called the prince's concerns misguided and misinformed. Then came the turning point. In June 2004, Drexler himself published a paper acknowledging that self-replicating machines are not necessary for large-scale molecular manufacturing, and that nanotechnology-based fabrication can be inherently safe. He later admitted, "I wish I had never used the term gray goo." The following month, the Royal Society released its definitive report, declaring that self-replicating machines lay too far in the future to be of concern to regulators. The scientific consensus today is clear. Gray goo, as an accidental scenario, is considered highly improbable. The concept relies on a universal assembler capable of breaking down and reassembling any type of matter, which sits far beyond current technology and may violate practical laws of chemistry. As researcher Chris Phoenix noted, runaway replication would only be the product of deliberate and difficult engineering, not an accident. The real danger, he argued, lies in the potential for molecular manufacturing to produce powerful weapons in unprecedented quantities. But here's what makes the gray goo concept enduringly valuable. It remains one of the most effective thought experiments in the ethics of technology, forcing us to confront low probability, high impact outcomes, and apply the precautionary principle to emerging technologies. And it connects directly back to that haunting question Fermi asked over lunch 75 years ago. If gray goo is a plausible fate for industrial civilizations, then perhaps the silence of the cosmos has its own terrible explanation. Perhaps the answer to where is everybody is that they built something very, very small and it ate everything.